At exactly 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning, a single video file appeared on the internet that would destroy one of America's most influential conservative voices forever. The footage was raw, unedited, and absolutely devastating. It showed Charlie Kirk, the man millions trusted as a moral compass, saying things in private that contradicted everything he preached in public. But here's what made this different from every other political scandal you've ever seen. The person who leaked it wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a rival. It wasn't some undercover journalist. It was his own bodyguard. Marcus Thompson had protected Charlie Kirk for 3 years. Former Marine, decorated combat veteran, a man who'd sworn an oath to defend with his life if necessary. For 1,095 days, Thompson stood in the shadows while Kirk inspired millions, built an empire, and became the voice of a generation. Thompson believed in the mission. He believed in the message. He believed in the man. Until that Wednesday night. What Thompson witnessed in a private donor meeting, captured on his phone in 11 minutes and 43 seconds of crystal-clear video, was so morally disturbing, so fundamentally corrupt, that this former Marine made a choice that would haunt him forever. He betrayed his oath of loyalty. He violated every security protocol. He committed what many would call the ultimate act of treachery. But was it betrayal, or was it the most courageous thing he'd ever done? By sunrise, 8 million people had watched the footage. By noon, Charlie Kirk's empire was collapsing. By evening, America was asking a question that still echoes today. How many other leaders are lying to us? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change how you see political leadership forever. To understand why this leak shattered millions of hearts, you need to understand who Charlie Kirk was to his followers. This wasn't just another political commentator. Kirk had built Turning Point USA into a movement that reached every major college campus in America. At 31 years old, he was already a best-selling author, podcast host with millions of weekly listeners, and the man young conservatives looked to for moral guidance. His message was simple and powerful. Stand for truth. Live your values, never compromise your principles. He spoke about faith, family, and integrity. He criticized other leaders for saying one thing publicly and doing another privately. He positioned himself as different, authentic, principled, the real deal, and Marcus Thompson believed every word. Thompson wasn't hired security from some agency. Kirk had personally recruited him 3 years earlier after meeting him at a veterans event. Thompson's background made him perfect for the role. Bronze Star recipient from 2 Iraq tours, deeply religious, conservative values instilled since childhood, and a genuine passion for what he thought Turning Point USA represented. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Thompson had actually attended TPUSA events as a supporter before he ever worked there. For 3 years, Thompson had unprecedented access. He stood outside private meetings. He traveled on Kirk's private jet. He was there during the unguarded moments when the cameras stopped rolling. And in all that time, Thompson never saw anything that shook his faith in the mission. Until recently, small things started bothering him. The way Kirk spoke to staff members when donors weren't watching. Comments about followers that seemed dismissive rather than grateful. Financial decisions that didn't quite match the public messaging. Thompson pushed these concerns aside. Everyone has bad days, he told himself. The pressure Kirk faced was immense. But Wednesday night wasn't a bad day. Wednesday night was a revelation. And what Thompson heard in that private donor meeting would force him to choose between loyalty to a man and loyalty to the truth. Keep watching, because the decision he made will shock you. Wednesday, 7:30 p.m., Phoenix headquarters. The executive conference room gleamed under soft lighting as 12 people gathered around the mahogany table. Charlie Kirk sat at the head, flanked by his senior strategists. 6 major donors, each having written checks exceeding $200,000, occupied one side. Trusted staff members who'd proven their loyalty over years filled the remaining seats. Marcus Thompson stood in his usual corner position near the door. After 3 years, people barely noticed him anymore. He was furniture, background, the silent guardian who was always there but never truly seen. His presence was so familiar that people spoke freely, as if he didn't exist. That invisibility would prove to be Kirk's fatal mistake. The meeting started normally. Kirk thanked the donors for their invaluable partnership in defending American values. He praised staff for their tireless dedication to the cause. Thompson had heard variations of this speech dozens of times. Standard executive meeting procedure. Then Gerald Whitmore spoke up. The Texas oil executive had funded 3 campus chapters and deserved respect. "Charlie, I need to ask you something directly," Whitmore said carefully. "I'm getting questions from friends about whether we're actually changing minds or just preaching to people who already agree with us. Some of your recent appearances seem designed more to create outrage than to persuade." The temperature in the room dropped. Thompson noticed Kirk's jaw tighten, a tell Thompson had learned to recognize over 3 years. Kirk's smile remained, but something darker flickered behind his eyes. "Gerald, with all due respect," Kirk replied, his voice smooth but edged, "we're not in the business of making liberals comfortable. We're in the business of building political power." His communications director quickly added, "Our engagement metrics are up 40% this quarter. Controversy generates attention, and attention generates donations." Another donor, Patricia Summers, leaned forward. "But Charlie, aren't we supposed to be about actual principles, about genuinely changing culture, not just generating clicks?" The silence that followed felt suffocating. Kirk's smile vanished completely, and what he said next made Marcus Thompson's hand move instinctively toward his phone. "Patricia, let me be brutally honest with you," Kirk said, his voice taking on an edge Thompson had never heard in public. "We're all adults here. It's time we talked like adults." Thompson's fingers found his phone in his jacket pocket. Some instinct, marine training, moral compass, divine intervention, told him to start recording. What came next would expose everything. Don't go anywhere. The truth is about to devastate millions. Thompson positioned his phone carefully in his jacket pocket, video camera activated. The angle wasn't perfect, but the audio would be crystal clear. And what Kirk said in the next 9 minutes would be heard by millions. "The principles are the product," Kirk continued, his voice carrying a chilling casualness. "They're what we sell, but what we're actually building here is a political machine that generates wealth, influence, and power for us." The room went deathly silent. Even the senior staff, accustomed to Kirk's private candor, shifted uncomfortably. Kirk seemed energized by the shock on Patricia's face. "Look, we tell college kids about defending Western civilization because that messaging activates them emotionally. We tell donors about saving America's future because that opens checkbooks. But between us, we're building a business empire using political activism as the vehicle," Gerald Whitmore interrupted, his voice strained. "Charlie, are you saying you don't actually believe in what you're teaching these young people?" Kirk laughed, a genuine laugh that somehow made everything worse. "Gerald, belief is for followers. We're leaders. Our job is to give people something to believe in, not to be naive enough to believe it ourselves." Thompson felt physically ill. 3 years of believing in a mission. 3 years of thinking he was protecting something meaningful. And here was the truth, spoken plainly in a room where Kirk felt safe. One of the younger staff members, a 26-year-old named David Chen, who'd sacrificed a higher-paying corporate job to work for TPUSA, spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, but don't we actually believe in these principles? Isn't that why we're doing this?" Kirk's expression hardened slightly before softening into something almost pitying. "David, you're young, so let me give you advice that'll serve you well in this world. Belief is a tool we use to motivate others. The successful people in this room understand that distinction." The strategy director pulled up a presentation showing campus events. "These confrontations are gold," Kirk explained to the donors. "We send speakers to liberal campuses knowing they'll get protested. We film everything, edit it to show leftist intolerance, and use it for fundraising. The students we send know the score. They're not there to change minds, they're there to generate content. And it works beautifully." Patricia Summers stood abruptly, her face pale. "Charlie, this isn't what I signed up to support. This is manipulation of young people's genuine idealism." Kirk's voice turned cold. "Patricia, you're supporting exactly What you thought you were supporting, a powerful organization that moves the political needle. You just didn't understand how it actually works. If that makes you uncomfortable, there's the door. Your competitors will happily take your place. The threat was unmistakable. Gerald pressed further. What about how donor money is actually spent versus what you tell us in fundraising appeals? Kirk's financial director pulled up internal budgets showing massive discrepancies. Money raised for campus activism was being funneled into personal consulting fees, luxury expenses disguised as operational costs, and brand building for Kirk himself. We tell donors their money goes to changing hearts and minds, Kirk explained without shame. Technically it does, just a much smaller percentage than they think. The rest builds infrastructure that makes all of us wealthy and influential. This is how every successful political operation works. The public face is idealistic. The private reality is that we're building business empires. David Chen stood up, his voice shaking. Sir, I can't. This isn't what you told us when we joined. I believed we were serving something bigger than ourselves. Kirk's expression turned glacial. David, you're dismissed. Jennifer, make sure his NDA is enforced. And David, if you talk about anything discussed in this room, we will destroy you legally and professionally. You'll never work in politics again. Understood. David left, visibly shaken. Thompson watched him go, recognizing himself in the younger man's shattered idealism. Patricia Summers gathered her things. I'm out. Consider my donor relationship terminated immediately. Kirk shrugged. Your choice. We'll have your replacement by next week. After Patricia left, Kirk addressed the remaining donors and staff with brutal honesty. This is the business we're in. We sell hope to followers. We sell access to donors. We build wealth and influence for ourselves. Anyone uncomfortable with that reality should leave now. No one else moved, and that, Thompson realized, was perhaps the most disturbing part. These weren't naive people being deceived. These were willing participants in a system they all understood was fundamentally dishonest. Thompson had seen enough, more than enough. He stopped the recording, his mind made up. What he held in his hand was explosive, not because it revealed illegal activity, but because it revealed something potentially more damaging, the complete cynicism behind a movement that millions believed was driven by authentic principles. Stay with me, because what Thompson does next will inspire you. Marcus Thompson spent that Wednesday night in a motel 2 hours outside Phoenix, wrestling with the weight of what he'd captured. The footage sat on his phone, 11 minutes and 43 seconds that would change lives, destroy careers, and shatter the faith of countless young people who genuinely believed they were part of something meaningful. Thompson had protected Kirk for 3 years. He'd stood between Kirk and potential threats. He'd taken his oath seriously. And now he had proof that everything Kirk represented publicly was a carefully constructed lie. The question wasn't whether the footage was damaging. The question was whether Thompson had the right to reveal it. He thought about David Chen, the young staffer who'd left that meeting with his idealism shattered. He thought about the thousands of college students volunteering their time, donating money they didn't have, sacrificing career opportunities because they believed in Kirk's message. He thought about the donors like Patricia Summers, who'd written huge checks thinking they were funding principled activism. They all deserved to know the truth. By 3 a.m., Thompson had made his decision. He created an anonymous Twitter account, uploaded the footage to multiple secure servers to prevent it from being scrubbed, and at 3:47 a.m. he posted it with a simple caption, 3 years protecting him, 1 night seeing the truth. America deserves to know. No additional commentary, no explanation. Just raw, unedited footage. Within the first hour, it had 50,000 views. By dawn, the conservative Twitter sphere was in complete chaos. By the time most of America woke up for work, the footage had exploded to 8 million views and was spreading across every platform. News outlets scrambled to verify authenticity. Conservative media figures tried desperately to frame it as out of context before they'd even watched the full video. Liberal outlets amplified it with barely concealed glee, and millions of people, many of them young conservatives who'd believed in Charlie Kirk, watched in stunned, heartbroken silence as their supposed leader casually admitted to manipulating them. The comments section became a digital graveyard of shattered faith. I volunteered 20 hours a week for TPUSA. I believed we were changing the world. I feel sick. I defended him to my family. I changed my career plans to work in conservative activism. He was lying the entire time. I donated money I couldn't afford because I thought it was going to a righteous cause. I was a fool. By 9 a.m., Turning Point USA's crisis response was in full effect. Kirk released a statement calling the footage selectively edited, and Thompson a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. But the statement made a fatal mistake. It claimed Thompson had been terminated 2 weeks ago for performance issues, within an hour. Employment records leaked, showing Thompson had been active through Tuesday. The lie was exposed immediately, making everything worse. Kirk's media allies rushed to his defense, but their arguments were contradictory and weak. Some claimed the footage was deepfake. Others acknowledged it was real, but insisted Kirk was just being strategic. None of them could address the central question: was what Kirk said true? The response from Kirk's followers was devastating. Social media filled with testimonials from betrayed believers. Campus TPUSA chapters began dissolving. Student leaders resigned en masse. Donors pulled millions in committed funding. But the fallout extended far beyond Charlie Kirk. The footage raised uncomfortable questions about the entire political ecosystem. If Kirk was cynically manipulating believers for personal gain, how many others were doing the same? How much of political activism was genuine conviction versus profitable performance? On Friday afternoon, 48 hours after the leak, Thompson broke his silence through his attorney. For 3 years, I protected Charlie Kirk because I believed in what he claimed to stand for. What I recorded Wednesday night proved that everything he tells his followers is performance art. I couldn't stay silent while young people sacrificed their futures for someone who was exploiting them. I won't apologize for choosing truth over loyalty. Keep watching, because the aftermath will move you. Within 2 weeks, Turning Point USA was in freefall. Campus chapters at 127 universities formally disaffiliated. Major donors pulled a combined $4.3 million in committed funding. Senior staff members resigned, many releasing statements distancing themselves from Kirk's comments. The board of directors demanded Kirk's resignation. He refused, claiming cancel culture was being weaponized against conservative voices. But his influence had evaporated overnight. Speaking invitations were cancelled. Media appearances dried up. Even conservative allies who'd initially defended him began quietly backing away as the full implications became clear. By the end of the first month, TPUSA had laid off 60% of its staff and was operating from a much smaller office, a shadow of its former empire. Kirk's personal brand suffered similar devastation. His podcast listeners dropped 70%. Book deals were cancelled. And most damaging, he became a cautionary tale among the very young conservatives he'd claimed to champion. Don't be a Charlie Kirk became shorthand for political cynicism and exploitation. Marcus Thompson paid his own price. Death threats flooded his phone before he changed numbers. Conservative media branded him a traitor. Legal threats from Kirk's attorneys piled up. Though none materialized into actual lawsuits, discovery would have forced Kirk to address his statements under oath. Thompson lost friends who valued loyalty over truth, but he also received overwhelming support from those who believed he'd done the right thing. Former TPUSA staff members reached out privately to thank him for validating what they'd suspected but feared to reveal. Young conservatives who'd felt manipulated saw Thompson as having given them permission to trust their instincts. Gradually, Thompson found new purpose, speaking to college conservative groups about the difference between principled leadership and cynical exploitation. Real leaders believe what they teach, Thompson told audiences. I spent 3 years protecting someone who didn't. Judge leaders by their private actions, not their public performances. The leak sparked a broader reckoning. Other organizations rushed to demonstrate authentic commitment to stated values. Transparency became a demanded standard. Young activists grew more skeptical of charismatic leaders without demonstrated integrity. The incident became a case study in ethics classes nationwide. What responsibilities do leaders have to followers? When does strategic messaging become manipulation? Where's the line between privacy and hypocrisy? But the most important question remained: what lasting impact would this have? Stay with me for the final chapter, because there's hope in this story. Today, 18 months after the leak, the landscape has fundamentally changed. Charlie Kirk operates a diminished media presence, a fraction of his former influence. Turning Point USA still exists, but as a marginal organization, a cautionary tale of what happens when private cynicism contradicts public principles. Marcus Thompson works in security again, but selectively, only for clients whose private behavior matches their public values. He's written a best-selling book about his experience, now used in ethics courses nationwide. He speaks regularly at universities, teaching young people to demand authenticity from their leaders. David Chen, the young staffer who walked out that night, now runs a non-profit teaching media literacy and critical thinking. "I learned the hard way that passion isn't enough," he tells audiences. "You need discernment." The footage Thompson leaked remains online, viewed millions of times, serving as documentation of the gap between political performance and private reality. But here's what truly matters. The night before still haunts us, not with despair, but with a reminder. It haunts us to demand integrity from leaders. It haunts us to question whether public messages match private behavior. It haunts us to value authenticity over charisma. It haunts us to protect the idealistic young people who deserve better than exploitation. Marcus Thompson was asked recently if he'd do it again. Knowing the personal cost? He paused, considering everything he'd sacrificed. "Every single time," he finally said. "Because people who believe in something deserve leaders who actually believe it too." The night before haunts us forever, not as a tragedy, but as a call to courage. Real leadership requires integrity when nobody's watching, or when someone finally is. And that's a truth worth protecting. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because in a world of performance and pretense, authentic courage deserves to be celebrated.